The love story of Suleiman the Magnificent and Hürrem Sultan has been told and retold for centuries, whispered in European courts and woven into legends. But behind the romance lies a truth far more complex, political, and turbulent than most imagine. This isn't just the tale of a sultan and a concubine who became his wife. It's the story of a partnership that altered the Ottoman Empire, challenged ancient traditions, and left a legacy that historians still debate today. To understand the shocking depth of their relationship, we must go back to the beginning when a young prince inherited one of the most powerful empires in history, and an enslaved girl from a distant land entered a palace unaware that destiny would make her a legend. When Suleiman ascended the Ottoman throne in 1520, he ruled a colossal empire stretching from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia. The palace operated on strict centuries-old rules. Sultans rarely formed emotional attachments, and concubines played carefully defined roles, kept far from matters of state. The very idea of a sultan falling deeply in love, let alone taking a legal wife, had all but vanished. Rulers were expected to maintain emotional distance to ensure clear political judgment. But Suleiman would be the one to shatter this tradition in the most dramatic way possible. Into this rigid world came Hürrem. Born Aleksandra in what is now Ukraine, she was captured during a raid and brought to Istanbul as an enslaved girl. Her early life in the harem was filled with uncertainty, but her sharp intellect, resilience, and an unusual joyfulness earned her the name Hürrem, meaning the cheerful one. For ages, palace women were valued for their beauty and obedience. But Hürrem was different. She had an irrepressible energy that drew people in. She learned languages quickly, mastered palace etiquette, and became known for her wit and bright personality. In a world where silence was a virtue, Hürrem brought laughter, stories, and a charm that made her unforgettable. No one knows the exact moment Suleiman first saw her. Some say it was at a musical gathering, others during a ceremonial presentation. Whatever the moment, the effect was immediate and profound. The Sultan, known for his poetic soul and quiet nature, found in her a spark that awakened something new. She wasn't just beautiful. She was magnetic in a way that defied the quiet submissiveness expected of a concubine. From that first encounter, Hürrem stood apart, not through ambition, but through a genuine connection that formed between her and the ruler of one of the world's mightiest empires. In the beginning, no one in the palace understood how deep Suleiman's attachment to Hürrem would become. At first, she simply replaced his favored concubine, Mahidevran, which was shocking enough. Mahidevran had given Suleiman his eldest son, Mustafa, and was expected to remain the mother of future heirs. Hürrem's arrival shattered this expectation. Her once admired cheerful nature suddenly became a threat to Mahidevran and others who feared losing their influence. While competition in the harem was normal, the rivalry between Hürrem and Mahidevran grew intensely personal, fueled by jealousy and the shifting balance of power. Hürrem then gave birth to multiple sons, breaking another deep-rooted tradition. Custom discouraged a sultan from having many children with the same woman, to prevent any single family line from gaining too much power. But Suleiman ignored this completely, visiting Hürrem exclusively. Each child she bore strengthened her position, but also created more unrest among palace factions. Hürrem's growing influence alarmed statesmen and foreign ambassadors, who watched the once predictable palace system become more volatile. Rumors spread across Europe that Suleiman had become a slave to his concubine, though this was mostly propaganda. The truth is, his connection to Hürrem didn't weaken his rule. Instead, their partnership created a new kind of power, an emotional and political axis rarely seen in world empires. Their relationship deepened not just through affection, but through mutual respect. Unlike other women in the Sultan's presence, Hürrem spoke to him with confidence. Her surviving letters show a woman who engaged the Sultan on an intellectual, emotional, and spiritual level. She wrote with deep devotion, calling him her son, her soul, her world. But she also discussed politics, social issues, and humanitarian projects. Suleiman valued her opinions, a reality that shocked the empire's elite. For the first time in centuries, a sultan sought emotional and political companionship from a woman, and he chose Hürrem. But the moment that truly shook the empire was his decision to legally marry her. Ottoman sultans had abandoned the practice of marriage for generations, to avoid political entanglements and powerful queen consorts. When Suleiman married Hürrem in a public ceremony, it shattered centuries of imperial tradition. European diplomats wrote home in disbelief, reporting that the Sultan had raised a slave girl to the status of queen. Within the empire, reactions ranged from astonishment to resentment. Some thought Suleiman had lost his mind. Others saw it as proof of Hürrem's extraordinary influence. The truth was simpler. Their relationship had outgrown the harem system, challenging customs that no longer fit the powerful bond between them. The most shocking truth is that their love was a political partnership that influenced decisions across the empire. Hürrem became a central figure in the palace, taking on responsibilities usually reserved for high-ranking officials. She corresponded with foreign leaders, advised Suleiman on charitable works, and oversaw palace reforms. She used her position to support education, architecture, and the welfare of the poor, establishing soup kitchens, hospitals, and schools that still stand today in Istanbul, Jerusalem, and beyond. Her humanitarian work softened her image with the public, but only intensified the hostility from palace elites. One of the most controversial parts of their story is the political struggle involving Prince Mustafa, the heir apparent and Mahidevran's son. As Suleiman's eldest and most celebrated son, Mustafa was incredibly popular with the army and the public. His growing fame was seen as a potential threat to Hürrem's sons and to the stability of the succession. In a system where fratricide, the killing of one's brothers, was illegal to prevent civil war, every prince was a danger to the others. The Sultan had to choose his successor carefully. Mustafa's popularity, combined with support from traditionalist factions, created a political storm. For centuries, historians have debated Hürrem's role in the conflict between Mustafa and Suleiman. Her enemies painted her as a manipulative schemer who plotted against Mustafa to protect her own sons. Yet the evidence suggests a more complicated reality. While Hürrem certainly would have supported her own children, she wasn't the sole architect of Mustafa's downfall. Powerful officials, changing political loyalties, and Mustafa's own actions all played a part. But because Hürrem held a position of unimaginable power for a woman, the blame naturally fell on her. The scandal became one of the most notorious episodes of Suleiman's reign, forever shaping Hürrem's legacy. But the shocking truth lies not just in the politics, but in the emotional cost both Suleiman and Hürrem paid as their lives intertwined with the immense weight of an empire. Behind the palace walls, their relationship was marked by deep affection, documented in poetry, personal gifts, and decades of companionship. Suleiman, who wrote poetry under the name Muhibi, dedicated many verses to Hürrem. Their bond weathered every storm, remaining unbroken until the very end. Hürrem died in 1558, after nearly 4 decades of partnership with the Sultan. Her death devastated Suleiman. The imposing ruler of a vast empire mourned her deeply. He built a magnificent mausoleum for her, right beside his own future tomb, ensuring that even in death, they would rest side by side, an extraordinary gesture in Ottoman tradition. This act alone reveals the powerful truth. Their relationship was a lifelong bond that defined an era. Suleiman ruled for 8 more years after Hürrem's death, but those years were marked by a profound loneliness. He continued his duties as ruler, but those closest to him noted a quiet sorrow that never left him. He wore Hürrem's ring, read her letters, and often visited her tomb. The man who commanded armies and reshaped continents was forever marked by the memory of a love that defied all rules. Suleiman's own end came during a military campaign in 1566. He was buried exactly where he had planned beside his beloved, Hürrem. This final act confirmed to the world that their connection was not just a political strategy, but one of the deepest love stories in history. Their story is shocking, not just because it broke rules or caused scandals, but because in a world ruled by tradition and cold calculation, their relationship made room for genuine affection, partnership, and humanity. Together, Suleiman and Hürrem created a bond that echoed far beyond their time, influencing politics, society, and culture. Hürrem was not simply a concubine who seized power, and Suleiman was not a ruler blinded by passion. They were an extraordinary partnership that blended love with leadership, leaving an indelible mark on the world. Their story remains one of history's most compelling tales of love and power, revealing the human heart at the center of a mighty empire. Thanks for watching.